And thanks so much for tuning in today to the SGT Report. We are so grateful and excited. Boy, my heart's actually beating out of its chest today, guys. We have on the line Mike Maloney, author of the book Guide to Investing in Gold and Silver, the founder of goldsilver.com, and the man behind the absolute must-see doc-style video series, The Hidden Secrets of Money, which you can watch for free over at Mike's other site, hiddensecretsofmoney.com. Mike Maloney and also my contributors Peter and Rory. Mike, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's just truly a thrill for us. Rory and Peter, are you there?
Yes.
Are your hearts beating like mine?
You got it.
Well, look, guys, I mean, as everybody listening knows, Mike Maloney is a pioneer in this space. His book, Guide to Investing in Gold and Silver, is a must-read tome. And, Mike, I mean, you're really a trailblazer, and I want everyone to know we're timing the release of this interview to coincide with the release of The Hidden Secrets of Money, Episode 2, 7 Stages of Empire. And, Mike, your team sent us a sneak peek of Episode 2 so we could watch it before this interview, and I have to tell you, it's absolutely epic. From the music and the sound design to the cinematography to the interviews, it's absolutely as good as anything that could be released in the theaters, and here you're providing all this phenomenal information to people for free. I just think it's very special.
You know, we have a passion for education at goldsilver.com, and Hidden Secrets of Money has a mission statement, and we read this aloud in our weekly meetings. That our mission is to enlighten the world that maximum prosperity can only be achieved through individual freedom, free markets, and sound money.
And that's just absolutely perfect. And it speaks to your heart and the heart of the company. And Mike, in Episode 2, toward the end, you say, and I quote, "Personally, I don't think there's any way to avoid what's coming. And I want to make sure that it's not just a few of the big investors in the world that end up with all of the cookies. I want to make sure that there's as many small investors as possible that are benefiting from it, because that's what makes societies run. The middle class and small investors." And I think that's very special because you want to help out everybody, because this collapse can't be stopped.
Well, you know, one of the things you see throughout history is that currency crises, things like debasement of the currency, directly leads to the rise of despots. Hitler came directly from the hyperinflation of 1923, the Weimar hyperinflation. Nobody knew who he was. He gave a speech during the final week of that hyperinflation to an audience of newly impoverished middle class. They didn't know, that they were scared. They didn't know what was happening. All their wealth had been wiped out. And some charismatic guy steps forward that says, he's got the answer, follow him and he'll show you the way out.
Well, sir, let me interrupt, because we're going to break here in 20 seconds. And when we come back, we're going to pick up that thought, because if the people become destitute after this collapse, then they can fall for anything. Any man could rise to power, and we could see a fascist dictatorship sweep the republic away. And before we went to break, Mike, you were talking about the fact that it was the collapse of the currency in the Weimar Republic that paved the way for Hitler's rise to power. And I think it's such an important lesson. Can you pick up that thought? Because people who don't understand history are condemned to repeat it.
You see the rise of dictators throughout history through currency crisis, when it's an opportunity that presents itself for somebody with this type of personality disorder. In November 15th of 1923 was the end of the Weimar hyperinflation. On the 8th, Hitler's stormtroopers, I mean, nobody knew who he was. He was just a minor character on the political stage in Germany at the time. And his stormtroopers took control of the Bürgerbrau Keller, pointed machine guns at the front door so nobody could leave. And to this literally captive audience, he took the stage at gunpoint and then gave a speech that was so charismatic that he turned all of these people in the audience who he was the enemy when he walked in. And then the next day, they followed him to try and do a coup and take over the government. It failed. He was put on trial for a month. And during that month, he had the ear of the nation. The judges were sympathetic to his beliefs, and they allowed him to go on for hours on end on these long diatribes about, basically political speeches. And he became quite popular because the middle class had just been wiped out. They were scared. They were desperate. And so one of the things that we are trying to do at goldsilver.com is one of our missions is to get as much gold and silver into the middle class, the hands of the middle class as possible, so that they don't vote some despot into power. You know, most of the middle class in the United States, the baby boomers, the average has a little less than $50,000 saved for retirement. Now, that means that's like, 6 months living expenses or a year if you are living lean, and then it's gone. And so most of these people are going to end up being wards of the state. Well, if that's the majority, what are they going to vote for? As things get worse and worse, they're going to vote for the government to take care of them increasingly. And this could definitely lead to the loss of the America that we know. And, we're seeing a very disturbing trend. If you go to freetheworld.com or economicfreedom.org, you can download a report where they analyze every country on the planet except for a few where they really can't measure. You can't measure the economy of North Korea because there really isn't one. And what you discover is that the more free a country is, especially economically free, where the government isn't dictating what businesses should do and where investors can put their funds, but they have these different measurements, the size of the government compared to the GDP, the levels of taxation, and also the burdensome regulations on business and the markets. And what they discover is that without exception, the freer a country is, the more prosperous it is. The disturbing trend is that, for decades, Hong Kong has been number one. In the 90s, Singapore worked their way up to number 2. We were number 3 in the year 2000. And then after passing the Patriot Act and several other things, 2 years ago, we had fallen to number 10. Last year, we were number 18.
Oh, my.
And here is the thing, is that without exception, you look at this, the bottom quarter of this list, the middle class does not live as well as the poorest people in the top quarter of this list. So if you want to help poor people, what you want to do is create a free society where business can prosper. Not create safety nets for them. What it does is it drags down all of society when you do this. The more socialist a country becomes, the more likely is the chance of this slide toward poverty, this slow slide toward poverty. So, we're trying to get as much gold and silver into the hands of the middle class because I do believe there is a currency crisis that is absolutely inevitable. You cannot do the things that they have done to the free market without having a currency crisis eventually.
That's right.
In episode 2 of Hidden Secrets of Money, you'll see one of the things that I discovered when I was writing my book. My book was written from 2005 to 2007. And I was looking for, I'm a believer in waves and cycles. And so I took every currency crisis, every market crash, every financial convulsion that the United States has been through since its inception, and put them into a spreadsheet looking for some sort of regularity to this, and something just leapt out at me that was amazing. Every 30 to 40 years, the world has a new monetary system, and you'll see this chain of evidence and logic that shows why the U.S. became a superpower. It was all financial. It wasn't that we're smarter or more powerful than everyone else. It was all basically a series of accidents that were very fortunate for the United States. It was other countries having war on their soil. Mm-hmm. And it led to us rising as a superpower and as the world's reserve currency. But now we're in a period of time where politicians have abused this. They think it's their birthright, this having the world's reserve currency. It was a tremendous privilege, and it allowed us to live at a higher standard of living than most of the rest of the world, simply because when we do deficit spending and create currency to fund that deficit spending, it dilutes the currency supply. That's one of the things that causes inflation. And inflation respects no borders. And the majority of U.S. dollars exist outside the United States because every central bank has to hold them. Every country on the planet has U.S. dollars in it. When we devalue those dollars, it transfers wealth from them to us. And it's a very slow, insidious tax that we have imposed on the rest of the world. There's been a wealth transfer from the rest of the world to the United States since the year 1944 when we went on the Bretton Woods system.
Well, that's right. And I'm going to assume that everybody listening has watched Hidden Secrets of Money Episode 1, Currency versus Money. Now, in Hidden Secrets of Money 2, 7 Stages of Empire, what people have to understand is the repeatable 7 stages that happen that lead to the fall of an empire happen time and time again. And according to you, in Episode 2, we are in Stage 6. And you say, and I quote, "The world is going to have a new monetary system in this decade that we're in." And I think that's such a powerful message that people need to hear, because if it's your mission to get as much gold and silver in physical form into the hands of the people in the middle class, what do you do for people that don't understand currency versus money? If they didn't watch Episode 1, if they don't know that money is a container for holding your economic energy, your true wealth is your time and your freedom, as you said in Episode 1, and real money, gold and silver, stores your economic energy. Rory has a mother. I have parents that don't understand it. They are so entrenched in this current system that they reject the philosophy of owning any physical metals in their portfolio. So I'm going to throw to Rory. Rory, quickly, what was your question as it pertains to Mike and trying to get people to watch this valuable series, which is free?
Thank you very much, Mr. Maloney, for being here today. What would you suggest as a way of opening that door? I mean, how can I make an approach? Because I've really tried for the past 4 years to get that door open, and no matter what I try, it just gets shut. I mean, there's just excuse me, an unwillingness to even consider it. So
you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right, Mr. Maloney? How do you get people to hear these words?
Well, that's the reason we made Hidden Secrets of Money so basic. It isn't highly technical. It's easy for anybody to understand. And with all of these animations, I really want to thank Aidan Mackness. He is our 3D animator. And he has done a spectacular job of creating these animations to make all these simple lessons so much more understandable. Yeah. But fiat currency basically leaks. It'll store your economic energy, but it's only temporary because it leaks. They can create new units of currency. Those new units, they're just pieces of paper that have some numbers on them. They get their purchasing power from diluting the units that are in circulation. And so basically, if you're holding some of those units of currency, some of the dollars that are in circulation now, and the government does some deficit spending and creates new ones, those new ones stole the economic energy, your time and labor and talent. It stole some of that and transferred it to the government. With gold and silver, they can't create new units at will. There's a certain amount of it, and if you want more, you have to expend a tremendous amount of energy to get that up out of the ground, refined, and put it into a coin. So it has this intrinsic value. That value is the labor and time energy that goes into digging up these extremely rare elements and putting them into a form where they're easily exchangeable. Well, so, the best that you can do for these people, I think, is just try and get them to watch Hidden Secrets of Money. I have found that if I can sit somebody down in front of it and get them to watch the first minute, they are just glued to that thing, even if they have no interest in finance or money. And I watch people like I was watching this lady that was in her 70s, didn't have any interest in this, and suddenly she's nodding her head in agreement. She got these processes and how currency robs us. She could feel, they can feel what is going wrong with the economy, and they can feel that there's something that isn't quite right. They just can't put their finger on it. And what I noticed when I saw this nodding of her head in agreement, saying, "Yeah, I knew that was it,"
yeah,
it just confirms this feeling that they had.
Yeah, she probably recalled the time that the certificates were actually gold certificates or silver certificates. She could probably remember a time. She just needed to remember that our currency was backed by gold and silver at one point in our not so distant past. We're going to break here in 90 seconds, but maybe she just needed to have her memory jogged.
Yeah, and everybody, though, can sort of feel that there's something that isn't quite right. And this has been a feeling that most people have had that has been increasing now for a decade. And when you watch episode 2 of Hidden Secrets of Money, you'll see that there's these different monetary systems every 30 to 40 years. The dollar standard is a very poorly designed economic monetary system. It's developing stress cracks and starting the beginnings of its implosion. And it's 42 years old now, so it is the longest lived of all these monetary systems. So it's really overdue, and it won't be anything unusual. We have these emergency meetings, and they come up with a new world monetary system every 30 to 40 years.
That's right. Yeah. So this one's getting very long in the tooth, and I think that it'll be germane to the conversation when we come back to have Peter ask his question, which is about the gold to silver ratio. And I think it's very germane to the topic because you were talking about mining these precious metals in physical form for the ground. It's very labor intensive, and they truly are stores of that economic labor. Now, for folks tuning in who haven't seen it yet, I advise you to watch Hidden Secrets of Money, Episode 1, Currency versus Money. What are those secrets of money? Well, number 1, the way the monetary system works. Number 2, you'll discover the Federal Reserve is a private corporation. And number 3, you'll learn the difference between current money. And now that you're up to speed, we are going to talk about the 7 stages of empire. But before we do that, I want to throw to Peter, who has a question for Mike about the silver to gold ratio and why silver over gold. Peter?
What a thrill talking to you, like Sean said. I got your book a few years back, and it was one of the catalysts in waking me up to things in this world. So thank you for all your work. And my question to you is, I've only owned one gold coin ever, and I had it for just a few months. I liked it, but every time I looked at that gold coin, I kept thinking about the number of ounces of silver that I could trade it for, and I did end up trading it for silver. I know that a lot of smart people like gold, but with a gold to silver ratio of 1 to 65 or 1 to 60, and I'm in this for the long term. Could you explain the rationale for owning gold in addition to silver, or am I okay just owning silver?
Well, I own both, but I buy my gold and silver depending on the gold-silver ratio. Right now, I would be buying pretty much all silver because we're, at about silver's value is about 1/65th of gold's value. I absolutely believe that we are going to see toward the peak silver reverting more toward its historic ratios against gold. It's really hard to get data all of this going back a few thousand years, but there's some some transaction receipts that you can find here or there. We do know that Alexander the Great pegged the gold-silver ratio at 10 to 1, and that worked out at about as well as all of the other times that they've tried to peg something that's a commodity in the free markets. It eventually doesn't work. It causes distortions of the market, and the supply-demand ratio of things gets all messed up, and you end up with too much of one thing and not enough of the other. And then the market overwhelms it, and it goes back to what the natural equilibrium should be.
That's interesting, though, Mike. If Alexander the Great pegged it at 10 to 1, that's kind of the ratio we see it actually being mined out of the ground in physical form, about 9.5 to 1.
Yes, and part of the reason it's down to 9 to 1 roughly is simply because silver deposits tend to occur closer toward the surface and gold deeper. So historically, the silver deposits were worked out sooner.
Okay.
But it used to be 12 to 1. I believe that in the Earth's crust, there's about 17 times more silver, but the mineable supplies were 12 to 1, hundreds of years ago. And so when you dig it up, on the average, there'd be 12 times more silver coins floating around than there were gold coins. So it was simply the free market doing the price discovery mechanism and figuring out the rarity of these two items and setting the values based on the rarity. Now, in China, I can't remember which dynasty, there was an official peg of 4 to 1, so silver's value was 1/4 of gold's. And I know that there was a period, I believe, in ancient Egypt where they were the same. So it all depends on what the supplies are for a given area. But on the average, around the Earth, it was 12 to 1. We've seen over a century now of gold and silver being so out of whack, and people just think that silver should be cheap these days. And, silver is a byproduct of mining some other base metals such as copper and lead, and zinc. But, and so whenever you have an industrial boom, when there's a real estate boom, when there's a lot of copper plumbing and wiring being used and a lot of, zinc going into castings for cars and things like that, and lead going into lead acid batteries, then you do have more silver coming to market as a byproduct of those things.
Well, let me ask you this. We're going to break here in 15 seconds, and when we come back, we'll have 14 minutes. But yes or no, do you think that silver, we've been offered a artificially low pricing opportunity here?
Absolutely. It's artificially low, and supplies have become much more scarce.
All right. Well, stay tuned. When we come back, we have 14 minutes to talk about the 7 stages of empire and why we are in stage 6. Before we went to break, I asked Mike if he thought that today's pricing of silver in the paper market was artificially low. And Mike, what was your response to that? Maybe you could expand upon your thoughts on the gold-silver ratio.
Well, we were talking about how the natural ratio before government manipulation sort of averaged about silver's value being about 1/12 of gold's for the first 2,000 years that gold and silver were money. They were minted into coins in Lydia somewhere around 680 to 630 BC, and that's when they became money. And so for about 2,000 years, across the planet, it sort of averaged out to about silver's value being 1/12 of gold's, because that's close to what the mineable supplies were. Now they're down to 9 to 1, so silver's value should be 1/9 of gold's value. But here it sits at 1/65. Now, part of what happened is, we used to have a tremendous amount of above ground silver because it was our coinage. And then there were silver stockpiles in the treasuries, and there were strategic stockpiles. You can't fight a war without silver ever since the age of electronics. In the late 1800s, so we went on the classical gold standard, and silver was demonetized by, it was relegated to just coinage instead of holding it in treasuries and backing currency with it, and using it for international settlement. It was slowly demonetized country by country to where the countries were on this classical gold standard instead of bimetallic. And the gold standard worked very well internationally, but at about the same time that treasuries were dishoarding silver, we hit the Comstock lode in Nevada, and then a couple years later there was the finds in the Silver Valley up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And the Silver Valley was an immense amount of silver. So was the Comstock, but the Comstock sort of barfed it all out in just a few years. The silver up in Idaho, it was an extremely rich deposit that ran for years and years and years and is still producing today. But the point was that a whole bunch of silver came onto the market at the same time that they were saying we're no longer going to be using silver, as a major form of currency, and relegated it just to coinage. And then there were some silver purchase acts back in the 30s, but silver's value had dropped periodically to 1/100th of gold's value. And then along comes World War II and the development of electronics. And, we had been developing electrical devices before that, but it was really World War II where technology took a major leap forward and the uses for silver exploded. And then, we stopped using silver in coinage in the mid-'60s. And so all of this, there was a tremendous amount of above ground silver from the silver purchase acts that the U.S. government had been doing in the 30s and the 50s. And all of that silver was slowly dishoarded through the 70s, 80s, 90s. And so there was this phantom supply coming to market from these above ground stockpiles that had been off limits before. This was being sold off and depressing the price at the same time that we were using it up with modern technologies such, when you look at a CD or a DVD, you're looking at silver. When you look in the mirror, you're looking at silver. Mm-hmm. When you type on a computer, you're typing on silver. You flip a wall switch and you're making an electrical connection with silver. When you look through a thermal pane window, you're looking through silver. It's everywhere. In minute quantities, we use it up and we throw it away. And in most cases, it's in such small quantities, it's not recoverable. So at the same time that its value has sunk to very low levels compared to gold, it has become quite rare. We used up all these above ground stockpiles and threw them away. And so the available above ground silver versus gold for investors to buy is way out of whack compared to the price ratio. And so I believe, in the late 70s, gold was rising, people started rushing toward it, and gold's price had been $35 an ounce just a few years before, in 71. In 79, when it reached 400, that seemed really expensive compared to 35. I mean, you're talking about more than tenfold already.
Right.
So that would be like $2,500 gold today. We're coming off of a floor this time of 250. And there was something psychologically that happened to people where the public changed their preference. When gold was rising and the average guy, back when the average person made $10,000 a year back in 1980, he'd rush into his bank and take some currency out of his checking account, rush into a coin shop and say, I want to buy gold too. And he'd hand them $500 and they'd plop one coin in his hand and he'd say, Oh, is that all I can get? How much is that shiny silver stuff? And they'd say, well, you can get 50 of those for each one of these. And so the public changed their preference to silver, and that's when you saw the gold-silver ratio just explode, and silver's value climbed all the way to 1/16 of gold's value. That is destined to happen again. So the answer basically is that when the gold-silver ratio is high like it is now, we're in the mid-60s, so silver's value is very low compared to gold's, I buy all silver. When it was 40 and above, when silver's value was 1/40th of gold's back in 2011, I was buying a lot more gold. I was buying a mix. When it was at 30, I wasn't buying any silver. I was just buying gold. And then I took some of that gold, and I when the ratio went back into the mid-50s, I sold the gold that I bought then and converted it to silver. and I got 80% more silver than I would have gotten had I just bought it when the silver was at the ratio of 30. So, yes, I believe in the silver story. Silver should outperform gold. I believe probably by a factor of 10 at this point. I think you are going to see a 10-1 ratio. And so if you want 6 times more gold than you can afford, buy silver now and swap it for gold later.
Yeah, it's such a powerful tip. Because in episode 2, 7 Stages of Empire, you remind us that in 1971, the United States had 12 times more dollars in circulation than we had gold to back it, so Nixon took us off the gold standard. I wonder if we could do the math now. John Williams could do it for us. I wonder how many more dollars are in circulation now. If it was 12 times what we could back in 1971, just imagine where we are now. I'm sure Mike can answer that question. Mike, I just want to let you know we have 6 minutes left in this segment and then one final segment, and I think it's really critical that people understand these 7 stages of empire. You note in episode 2, today we are doing the same thing that the Athenians did that caused the loss of their great culture. We're doing the same currency debasement, the same deficit spending, and it's for the same reasons. It's for war, it's for great public works. And people need to understand that these monetary systems don't last very long, 40 years. We're in year 42, 7 stages of empire. Mike, why are we in stage 6? And we have 5 minutes here.
Well, we're in stage 6 because of the abuses that it's sort of natural. First of all, no man-made monetary system can ever last. They are designed by men and not the free market. If the free market was picking what money was and then picking the cost of money, basically setting interest rates, you would have a stable system where there wouldn't be misallocations of capital, underinvestment in one area and overinvestment in another, causing a warped economy where a bubble pops up over here and you've got some other sector that should be invested in and is not getting invested in. And so the manipulations also, like the Federal Reserve, this is one of the things that's creating these stress cracks. But no man-made monetary system can account for all the forces in the free market. So they all develop stress cracks and implode. And I guarantee you they're going to try and create some hocus-pocus monetary system that's going to be based on fiat currencies again, because it creates a wealth transfer that keeps the people at the top levels in power. The banking class basically gets to ride for free, the financial sector, without producing goods and services. They conjure up numbers on either pieces of paper or in computers, and then loan those conjured numbers to us and charge us interest. That creates a wealth transfer to them.
Yeah, what a brilliant trick on their part.
It is. It's like this great sort of hat trick shell game that they got going on that keeps us all confused and obscures what's really going on. But the reason that it's falling apart basically is because you can't it's just not possible for men to create a system that accounts for all of these forces. And then you've had the Federal Reserve repressing price information. The free market relies on price information to balance things. And now they've just determined that interest rates are going to be low, period. Well, what does that do? I mean, it punishes savers, rewards investors and speculators. They're trying to prop up some bubbles that have popped. And you can't, no matter, once there's holes in the balloon, doesn't matter how fast you blow, it's going to eventually all fall apart one day. But I see it, though, as a tremendous opportunity, because in these events there's a tremendous wealth transfer. And here's something that wasn't covered yet in Hidden Secrets of Money Part 2, that when you change monetary systems, there is this wealth transfer, and but the wealth transfer this time will be bigger and more violent than at any time in history the last changes, we were coming off of a system that had a component that could not fail. Gold was a component of each of these previous monetary systems. So we went from full gold backing, where there was as much gold in the treasuries as there was currency in circulation. Then with the establishment of the Federal Reserve, we basically made it legal. We made fraud and theft legal. It was basically a change in laws so that the Federal Reserve and the governments around the world did this to where they could create more claim checks on gold than gold that existed. Basically, they wanted to print claim checks for gold that wasn't there. It's, the currency was a claim check on gold. It said it was redeemable in gold. But with a 40% reserve ratio, that means you could print $50 worth of claim checks for each $20 worth of gold that you had in the vaults.
Yeah.
That's fraud.
45 seconds here.
Okay. Well, this time we went from full gold backing to 40% gold backing to an unspecified gold backing under Bretton Woods, and then to no gold backing on the dollar standard that we're currently debt backed. Now we're probably going to go from nothing back to something. It's going to be a financial convulsion the likes of which the planet has never seen before.
Well, that's right. And it's not just the U.S. central bank that's doing this. It's all of the world's central banks. And
simultaneously,
sir. And here's a report from Michael Snyder over at Economic Collapse blog today that we posted. A quadrillion yen in counting. We only have 6 minutes left in the show, and it breaks my heart. But that's why you need to get over to goldsilver.com and check out Hidden Secrets of Money, Episode 2, 7 Stages of Empire. Hey, fellas, before we lose Mike, do any of you all watch that show called Pawn Stars?
Yes.
Yep.
I get a kick out of that show, and Mike, I saw an excellent example of Gresham's Law the other day on an episode of that Pawn Stars show, which takes place at a pawn shop in Las Vegas, and the old man was caught by the other guys for hoarding 5-gallon buckets of copper pennies. It's perhaps the only opportunity we have left in this country to exercise Gresham's Law, isn't it? Because they've taken the rest of our money away from us. And by the way, copper pennies are pre-1983 pennies, guys.
Yeah, well, even the zinc pennies that we've had since 1983 are worth more than a penny. So if you want to save in something that's real, save pennies and nickels. It's about 6 cents to make a nickel and about a penny and a half to make a penny. Let me see, I think it was back in the late 90s or early 2000s, there was an act passed in Congress where they made it illegal to export, melt, or treat, and I don't know what treat means, but export, melt, or treat more than $5 in nickels or pennies. You can go to jail for 10 years if you leave the country with $5 worth of pennies in your pocket.
Isn't that funny? And we're a free people.
What they're trying to do is to keep these units of currency in circulation, and they don't realize by printing all of the paper units of currency and conjuring all of the digital units of currency and inflating that portion of the currency supply, it causes the cost of the labor rates and the energy that's involved in mining to rise to the point where to make a penny costs a penny and a half. Soon it'll cost 2 cents, and so those are actually real money at this point because they have intrinsic value, meet all of the other criteria of money. And if you watch Hidden Secrets of Money Part 1, you'll learn all of the criteria of money. One thing I want to urge your listeners to do, on the 13th of August here, we are launching hiddensecretsofmoney.com. And there is nothing there that we sell. Everything is free. So if your listeners could please go there and learn this stuff, because it is just so important that everybody learns this stuff as soon as possible. And if they like what they see, and remember, it doesn't cost you a penny, it's just education, please share it with people, because it's really important that as many people find this stuff out as soon as possible. We are in historic times right now. 50 years from now, when historians look back at the stuff that has been happening now since 9/11, but is happening at increasing rates, and before the end of this decade, like I say, the world will be on a new monetary system. It's normal, it's natural for man-made systems to implode like this. And these crises that you've been seeing all over the world are simply poorly designed, like the euro. I said in my book, the book was written from 2005 to 2007. Back then, the euro was the darling currency of the world. It was going to replace the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. And I said, impossible. The euro is doomed. You can't have all these countries sharing one currency and one central bank, yet having the ability to set their own monetary policy and their own deficit levels of deficit spending. It won't work. And what you're seeing is the fact that it doesn't work. And the euro may implode first. The dollar may be the short-term beneficiary of the euro's demise. But we're coming up to a period in history here where you're going to see fiat currencies becoming suspect. And it's the first time that this has happened. This has happened thousands of times before, but never globally and simultaneously. So it is, when I was writing my book, I read some quotes from a guy named Larry Bates, who wrote a book called The Great Economic Disorder, and he said that wealth is never destroyed, it is merely transferred. When I read that, I went, oh my God, this is the biggest wealth transfer in history. And I wrote that in my book, and Robert Kiyosaki and a few other people started saying the greatest wealth transfer in history, and actually it's gotten quite popular, but it's only half the quote. The quote goes, this is the greatest wealth transfer in history, therefore it is the greatest opportunity in history. And everybody leaves that part out. Yeah. If you get educated and you can see what is position yourself so that during this wealth transfer, wealth flows toward you instead of away from you. It is so important.
It is so important, sir, and we're going to lose you now, and I can't thank you enough for your time. It was a real privilege for all of us to be able to speak with you. Everybody check out goldsilver.com and thehiddensecretsofmoney.com. You are not going to want to miss episode 2 of The Hidden Secrets of Money. My thanks to Mike Maloney. Sir, Godspeed. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.